Welcome to I Love to Tell the Story, a podcast on the narrative lectionary. I'm Rolf Jacobson.
I'm Kathryn Schifferdecker.
And I'm Craig Koester. And this is the podcast for March 2nd for Transfiguration Sunday. And we're reading from Luke chapter 9, verses 28 to 45. You'll find in this passage that there are really several components to it. It starts off with the classic story of the Transfiguration, Jesus and the disciples on the mountain. They see him in his glory. It ends with Jesus' prediction of his passion, that he's going to be betrayed into human hands, anticipating the sort of the end of the Lenten cycle. And in between the glory at the beginning and the suffering at the end, we get a very odd story about Jesus being confronted with a man with a son who's seems to be suffering from seizures. And so Jesus is then confronted with this need to heal in the middle of it. And there's a sort of a striking, jarring almost contrast between the glory of the mountain, the anguish of the suffering, and just this, oh my gosh, we're just kind of muddling along in between, having to contend with things like illness and misunderstanding. And it's an interesting juxtaposition in which it's almost easier for me to handle the glory and suffering and get into the theology of the cross and all that good kind of stuff. But then there's this passage in the middle where Jesus seems to be kind of annoyed, not at his pastoral best, it would seem, you faithless generation. Nonetheless, in that moment, a healing takes place.
Yeah, so we're at the end of Epiphany, or the beginning of Lent, right? We're on that cusp, that hinge point between Epiphany and Lent. So we'll have a podcast for, Ash Wednesday is coming up, and then the first Sunday in Lent, we'll do podcasts for both of those. But and this is in one way what we talk about in Epiphany, Jesus revealing of himself.
Yeah.
This is a revelation par excellence, right?
Yeah.
I mean, this is Jesus on a mountaintop, right?
Yeah.
Clothes become dazzling white, and there's Moses and Elijah, right? Like, if you didn't know who this person was up till now, surely this will show you, right? That this is, the Messiah, the Son of God. Now, I know that we've said this on previous podcasts in different years, but it's worth noting that Moses and Elijah here, yes, they represent the law and the prophets, right? Moses, the law, the giving of the law, Elijah, one of the great prophets. But more to the point, they represent the end times, right? Both Moses and Elijah in Jewish thought were expected to reappear, to be the precursors to the Messiah, to the end time. And that's really more their function here than kind of some symbolism of the law and the prophets.
Absolutely, totally. Yeah. That's totally the case. Elijah, a reminder, is one of the couple of humans in the Old Testament who don't die. He's taken directly into heaven, which then makes him available to come back. And Malachi, at the end of Malachi, it says, Elijah, my servant, will return before the great and terrible day of the Lord.
Yep.
And Moses, his death is reported, but because no one knows where he's buried, then there becomes some tradition that he also didn't die, and so that he can come back. And so the story is saying, this is the end times.
Right,
this is the eschatological moment where God's will be revealed. And we start at verse 28, but people might be reminded that back in verse 18 and following, Jesus says, "Who do the crowd say that I am?" They answered, "John the Baptist." Remember, he's dead. But others, Elijah or one of the ancient prophets. So you've got this wondering about who Jesus is, and this is telling you both he's not Elijah or Moses, but he is the one that will bring in God's preferred future.
And the prophet is expected to be Moses as the prophet, right? In Deuteronomy, Moses says God will raise up another prophet like me.
Yep, Deuteronomy 18.
Yeah. And isn't it in John, in the Gospel of John, John the Baptist is asked, "Are you the the Messiah? Are you Elijah? Are you the prophet? Right? These three figures who are expected at the end of time.
Yeah. Yeah, you find those traditions about the expectation of the prophet like Moses, a new Moses coming. You do find that. And people wondering if Jesus fit the bill. If he was the, if he was that fulfillment.
So if that's the case, then Peter's reaction doesn't seem so strange to us, perhaps, right? Master, it's good for us to be here. Let us make 3 dwellings, 3 tents, literally, one for you, one for Moses, one for Elijah. Well, let's just stay up here on the mountain, right? And let's build a new tabernacles for the presence of God, which is obviously present and here.
A question for both of you. The dwelling is the skate, which is also the dwelling in the Festival of Booths. I can't remember the significance of that. Do either of you recall what's the connection here? That the fact that it's a skate, not to that. I've heard a connection made.
I suppose you could do that. I mean, the skene, the booths during the Festival of Booths, the tradition there was that there was a reminiscence of Israel's living in temporary shelters in the wilderness on their way to the Promised Land. So,
is it the same? I should know this, and I don't. Is it the same word used for the tent of meeting?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Which is probably where I would make that connection more.
Yep.
The tabernacle, the tent of meeting.
Yep, it's used both for the tabernacle and the tent of meeting. Both of those expressions get translated skene in the Greek Old Testament.
But that's not the right. Well, that's not the right response, right? Because then the cloud comes over and God says, "This is my son, my chosen. Listen to him."
Yeah. Right. I mean, it's that moment of. This is the eschatological moment. Yeah, we've arrived.
Yeah, right.
Well, no, we haven't arrived. Wait a sec. No, are we there yet?
Right,
I thought we've arrived, and that's where the story is one of those climactic moments where the end isn't the end, or else you're given a glimpse of the end as something that beckons you forward, even though you're not living in that reality. I mean, my gosh, that just says so much about life. Where it's that so much of life is lived in the next scene where you're Jesus is dealing with, oh my gosh, one more illness, oh my gosh, one more task to perform. Okay, people are just sort of thinking that I'm the endless dispenser of good stuff. Okay, I guess impatience that he exhibits there. But that's where the end isn't the end. It keeps going in the story. And the remarkable thing is that the glory that's revealed on the mountain is, in a sense, revealed in the ordinary moments of healing, the ordinary moments of dealing with things like illness, a crisis, because that's what people are astounded at the greatness of God. Not on the mountain, but there in the sick room. And then you have to wonder, and is the glory also going to be revealed in that final piece too, when he's handed over to the sinful to be crucified? Is his death too a manifestation of glory? And the answer would be yes, there too. That's where the lens is needed, something that pulls you beyond what your eyes can ordinarily see into a sense of the power of God being revealed in different ways, often which is hidden from our eyes now, but which gives you a glimpse of, but this is the future into which God is calling you, bringing you, and God stops at nothing short of bringing that about.
That glimpse, I like that word. If I found when I preached on the Transfiguration, I've in the past talked about a glimpse of grace or a glimpse of glory, and now a few weeks ago when we were talking about the raising of the widow's son at Nain and the healing of the centurion's servant, I think you, Craig, brought up the point. Well, so why, why isn't everybody healed, or we wonder that, right? And here, I think is the answer, at least one answer, one part of the answer that those are glimpses, right? Those healings, those raising of the dead, the blind receive their sight. These are glimpses. These are signs, like to John's question, right? Go and tell John what you've seen and heard, the blind receive their sight. These are glimpses of the kingdom coming.
Yeah.
Right? And it's not here in its fullness yet, but these are signs to give us hope in the midst of our losses and our longings.
There's an interesting phenomenon with time in the New Testament that normally we think about time moving forward from the now into tomorrow and the day beyond tomorrow and beyond and beyond. With New Testament eschatology, if we can use that big word, the movement is actually the other direction, in which the future comes into the present, in which there's something from the future that comes in and into the present and grasps you. You haven't arrived, but that vision of the future is what grasps you. And that's what I think is so absolutely important here. With the Transfiguration, it's really the future coming into the present to grasp you. My gosh, that's just on an ordinary life basis where the life of faith is so often a life of slogging. I wish I could just say it was all celebration. That would be great. Singing Hallelujah chorus all the time, I'd love to be able to do that. I'm sorry, that's not the way life is. But is there a future that grasps you, something that comes in? We haven't arrived yet. But what is the future that calls me? What is the future that compels me? What is the future that inspires me? That's what the Transfiguration is doing, is it's giving you that sense of why keep moving through the ordinary? Why keep moving through the struggle? Because God's not done yet. And you need a vision of where God is going. You need a vision of where God is going in order to inspire you, to claim you, to say, this is the future that I want to be part of. This is the future that claims me and my way of life in the here and now.
I Love to Tell the Story is a production of Luther Seminary's Working Preacher. The narrative lectionary was developed at Luther Seminary and has been hosted on Working Preacher since 2011. Find episodes and links at workingpreacher.org/narrative. And be sure to rate, subscribe, and comment on YouTube. Thanks for joining us.